To make the top of this costume, I took one of my leotard patterns, specifically the Odette leotard pattern, and I folded up the bottom because I was only creating a bodice, and I pinned it to this jersey cloth, which was cotton. I don't recommend using this cloth if you're going to make a normal leotard because if you sweat a lot in it, it does get a bit crusty and disgusting. But it was nice and thick and it felt really comfortable, so that's why I ended up deciding to go with this for the bodice top. So I simply just cut out the pattern, front and back, pinned and sewed them together using a running stitch, and then if you don't have a hemming machine, you can use a zigzag stitch to somewhat hem it. You do have to make sure that the thread and the stitching is very close together and tight. Link down below, I will have the pattern for this leotard, and you can use it like how I did, modifying it so that it can be used as a bodice. And after making this, actually, I realized that it would make for a very nice top as well. So there's also that. I'll also have linked down below some corset patterns, but I had to significantly modify them to fit because they were way too big. But yeah, so that was all I did for the top. Simply sew, cut and sew. Yeah. Coming up with the design was a more difficult part. To create a symmetrical design, I pinned it in half so that you would see the profile of so you're pinning it in profile, not pinning it front and back together. You're pinning front and front together. And then I traced on the outside side with a pencil a bit of a design, some markers as to where I wanted it, because when you fold it this way and pin it this way, you can easily do the exact same markings on the opposite side so that it's nice and symmetrical. Out of this whole process, the most difficult part was coming up with a design. I spent probably 2 hours just with a bunch of different beads that I had, just placing them around the top, trying to figure out what looked nice, going on Pinterest and looking at different costumes and seeing what could work. I went with a background of these tube-looking beads. So I started off with an idea of I'm going to create these swirls, and I'm going to start with doing that with these tube beads, and then from there I'll figure out what I'm doing next. I ended up kind of filling in those swirls with these big gems that I had found, and then these pearls, a lot of sequins. Once again, I just had roughly 5 to 8 different types of beads, and I just spent a lot of time looking at what would look good, creating like little flowers, little tiny accents, and seeing where it could fit, where it could match with the sequins that were already on, or not the sequins, the 2 beads that were already on the bodice. It was very time consuming. It is very time consuming. It's a lot easier if you just buy a lace that has an accent and then you pin that and sew it onto the top, and then based on the design you can sew more beads onto that. That is easier, but this looks a lot nicer. So you do what is easiest. This ended up taking me a long time trying to come up with what could work, and also just finding beads that do work together. I wanted the costume. The costume is clearly pink, but I wanted to add a bit of depth, so I shone the big jewels in the light, in sunlight, and I could see there was a bit of blue, a bit of purple, a bit of green, so then I added some other beads later on that matched. Once I kind of had an idea of what I wanted, I just hand stitched on everything, which is very time consuming, but the great thing is that you can do it while listening to something, while watching a movie, listening to a podcast, listening to a book. So if you are studying, it's still easy to do. And I got left with this beautiful bodice top, which I then sewed onto a tutu. Now the tutu was a tutu that I already had. I did take it apart so that it would fit, and I hand stitched it first onto the tutu, and then I sewed it on with the machine. And to cover that area, I covered it with more of these jewels on the outside, which ended up being like this very thick belt. I do have a tutorial on how to sew a practice tutu, and soon I'll be coming out with how to sew a professional one that looks like this one. Now, originally I sewed on a zipper, but because this material was not stretchy enough, it was too loose on my body. It wasn't quite fitting, so it didn't fit so nicely. So I would recommend doing the corset clips, which all professional ballet costumes have. I'm not sure if I included that in the video, but it's kind of doing the same thing. You just pin it on and sew it, and it's very easy. I didn't want to do too much to the tutu part, but I did need to do something because I wanted the centerpiece of this to be the bodice. So I took these little pieces of tulle, came up with a design with these gems, sewed them onto the tulle, and then I stuck those around the skirt part. This was a bit time consuming as well, but once again, you can do it while listening to something, while watching something. If you're talking to someone like your roommate, your friend, whatever, you can do that while talking to people. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Once I had the design on, I just cut around the edges, making sure not to cut any of the thread because obviously that'll just tear apart all the sewing that I did. I didn't want it to be too covered in tulle, and then I attached those to the skirt part. What you're seeing now is I wanted the back to have a bit more design, so I once again added more of those swirls, which I initially did, and then continue to design around it, add to it with sequins, with those other bigger jewels, and making it look a bit more exciting than just swirls, because you don't really see that from far away. One of the last touches that I did was I took these circular jewels and I just kind of randomly placed them around the tutu because I did need to have some form of sparkle, and I sewed these on. I recommend sewing stuff as gluing. You never know whether it might fall off because you are sewing it to tulle. Tulle doesn't have that much hold to it. The next thing I did, the last thing I think I did, was I made these earrings. So I just had these earring things, and then I took wire. I made a design so that you wouldn't really see any wires sticking out anywhere, and it wouldn't catch onto my hair, which is huge because you don't want to rip out any hair. So you take a piece of wire, in the middle of it you put one bead, you twist that, then you take both of the ends of the wire and you put it through a bigger bead. And then you continue doing that with whatever other beads that you want, and then you put that wire, the end of it, through the hook, which is going to go into your ear, and then you just twist around it, cut it, and that's it. It looks a bit difficult, maybe not really, but it's not. It's simple, it's easy, they're big earrings, and they look good. That's all there was to the costume. I did add straps, and these were white, so then I did take foundation and I painted them with skin color so that it would blend onto my skin so that you wouldn't see it. It would just look like a princess top. This is what the outcome of the costume was. I was very happy. It fit very nicely. I wore it twice on stage, so I performed in it twice. Both times it worked. Nothing came apart. Nothing went wrong. I'm very happy with the outcome. I did find a tiara which matched perfectly, same color of beads. Here I am showing you that I'm covering the straps with concealer. This is time consuming. It's a bit uneven, so I don't recommend doing this. If you can find skin colored straps or skin colored elastic, much prefer that over this, because this, as you can see, did not work too great. Anyways, I found a perfect matching tiara, which I will link down below if you need a tiara. There were 2 tiaras, this one, and then I also danced talisman, so I had another diadem more thing, or not a diadem, it was, yeah, whatever. Anyways, you'll see what it looks like down below. This one will also be linked down below. I highly recommend them. They stayed on my head perfectly without any pressure. Very happy with the outcome. It turned out really nice, really comfortable. Yeah, I hope this was helpful. Happy sewing. And yeah, thanks for watching.